Welcome back to Solo Adventures. My name is Livy and I'm here today with a Gamebook review. Alright, so before we get underway with that, I just want to touch on a couple of topics. So the sound you hear in the background is actually my husband's new 3D printer. There's not really much that I can do about it because I live in a small apartment and the print jobs take a very long time to complete, so hopefully it won't be too annoying for you. On the plus side, that means that I now have access to a 3D printer, so I can make my P&P builds even more awesome. I've already printed myself a gorgeous new dice tower to replace my old one that was made out of cardstock. I'm really looking forward to using it in my future gameplay videos, but if you're absolutely burning with curiosity and you just need to see what it looks like, I've also posted a picture of it on Patreon. So the book I'm going to review today was very generously donated to me by a viewer who is as of now anonymous. I'm not really sure who sent me this copy of Heart of Ice, but if it was you, then please let me know so I can thank you properly. I really appreciate it. By the way, if you take a look at my Amazon supplies list in the description below and you see something in there that you really would like me to review, well, if you send me a copy of it, I can guarantee that I will. So without any further ado, let's venture forth. So Heart of Ice is a game book that was written by very beloved gamebook author Dave Morris. You might know him for his probably most famous books, the Fabled Lands series. He's written some books in the meantime, but Heart of Ice was published in 1994. This is the revised edition that came out in 2013. I'm not really sure what the differences are between this one and the original, but maybe some new content was added, maybe a few bugs were fixed. I'm not entirely sure, but as far as I know, this book is still pretty close to the original. The biggest difference is probably going to be the cover, which is, in my opinion, way nicer than the original. So Heart of Ice was originally published as part of the Virtual Reality series, and this was a somewhat short-lived series of game books that were published back in the 90s. Today they are published by Fabled Lands Publishing, which I believe is owned by Dave Morris. So I have not read any of the other virtual reality books, but as far as I can tell, the gameplay in these are pretty similar. So unlike a lot of other game books out there, like for example Lone Wolf or Fighting Fantasy, you don't use dice when you play this game. There are different skills that you can select, and there are basically different ways that you can equip your character with items, but you're not going to be rolling dice to determine the outcome of various things. There is not really a lot of randomness in this book. You might like that, you might not like that. I personally enjoy it because it's kind of nice to have sort of something in the happy middle. It's a little bit more involved than a choose-your-own-adventure book, but you aren't at the mercy of bad die rolls. There are 10 skills that are possible in this book, but you are only able to pick 4 of them with your character build, so that means that this book has pretty decent replayability. And you'll probably find yourself, of course, respecing your character multiple times as you die in various ways trying to find the ending. All of the skills are useful in their own way. I do think that there are a couple that are leaned on a bit more heavily when it comes to making progress in this book, but I will not spoil which of these skills I think are the most useful. You have to figure that out for yourself. So the basic idea of this book is that it's the year 2300 and the entire world has been plunged into an endless Arctic winter, except for a couple of spots where it's a very hostile, very hot jungle. The reason why this happened is that the artificial intelligence that controls the satellites that moderate the temperature around the Earth somehow went berserk, and there we go, endless winter. So you, the hero, by chance end up intercepting a message from this artificial intelligence that controls the climate, and you learn about an extremely powerful artifact called the Heart of Volant. You learn that the Heart of Volant is a mysterious meteorite artifact that has been hidden away in the city of Du-En, and that whoever can find this artifact will have ultimate power. Unable to resist the allure of this, you of course set out to try to find the city of Du-En, and therefore also the Heart of Volant, and claim the power for yourself. Unfortunately, you are not the only person who heard this broadcast, and there are several other people you're going to have to contend with in your quest for this artifact. With the Earth basically dying a slow death in endless winter, obviously there's a lot of attraction to gaining this artifact. But if you want to claim the power for yourself, you are going to have to be extremely cunning and maybe just a little bit ruthless. So I'm not going to go too deep into spoiler territory with this review, but if you're the sort of person who likes to read a game book with knowing very minimal information going into it, I would suggest that maybe you stop watching the video around here. Like I said, I'm not going to go into any serious spoilers, but I will be touching on a couple of elements, what to expect in this book going forward. This review, in a nutshell, is read this book. It's extremely good. You won't regret it, and it's honestly one of the best game books that I've read in my life, so go out and buy it and play it. But if you're interested in hearing some more detailed thoughts on this book, stay tuned. Are we ready to go? Okay. So with this game, like a lot of game books, you're going to have to fill out a player sheet. I of course printed one off the internet so I didn't have to write in my book. But when you build your character, you can choose 4 of the 10 skills. So the skills are agility, which is pretty self-explanatory, close combat, which is martial arts, cunning, the ability to think on your feet. We have cybernetics, which is the ability to program and use computers. ESP, which is kind of the touch of paranormal that I guess you have in this world, is you have some people who are able to use the power of their mind to read other people's minds or to basically control things with psionic power. There's lore, which is a combination of history and legend and just knowing background about the places where you are. Paradoxing, which is related to ESP, but this allows you to kind of subtly manipulate reality to your will. Piloting, which is the ability to operate basically any vehicle from a snow sled to a space shuttle. Roguery, which encompasses all of your stereotypical rogue skills like sneaking around and picking locks. There's the skill shooting, which if you choose, you will also get to begin the game with a laser gun. Streetwise, which is the ability to navigate around cities. And survival, which allows you to survive in hostile environments. So as I said, the gameplay for this book is pretty basic. You don't have to roll any dice, and therefore your character sheet is also pretty basic. However, there is a bit of a catch. You can only carry 8 items at a time. And trust me, your inventory is going to fill up quickly and you're going to want to just take everything you can find with you, but you'll have to make some really hard decisions there. Like Fabled Lands and like some other of Dave Morris's books, there is also the code word system here, which means that at certain parts in the story you'll be told to record various code words, like, for example, radish, and then later on in the book it's possible that it will ask you, all right, do you have code word radish? Turn to page 434, and then you can do that. It's basically a clever memory system to keep track of the things that you've learned and the things that you've done, and allows in general a more elaborate and deep gamebook experience where your decisions affect the story more as time goes on. So let's get into what I like about this book. First off, we have the writing, which in my opinion is perfect for a game book. In game books, I don't really like it if the authors get too detailed or too in-depth or too flowery with their language, because even though it's good reading the first time, I never cheat at game books, so I always will come back and reread the same passages many times, and it's better to not have too much fluff impeding my progress. The writing in this book, I think, strikes a really fantastic balance between being detailed and being condensed enough to get the point across without taking too much time. I really get the feeling for the world and the environment, and in general I feel like this gamebook is about as immersive as a gamebook could be. Something I also like about this book is that it doesn't seem that there's any just random choices. Unlike a lot of other choose-your-own-adventure or game books, things like that, there aren't any situations, or at least not any that I came across, where you will just have to choose whether you go right or left, and there will be no clue as to which way you should go. There won't be like a red and a green lever, and you just have to guess which one that you want to pull. Some unfortunate, unforeseen things will happen, of course, from time to time, but honestly, every time I died playing this book, I felt like, yeah, it was kind of fair. I kind of get that. I understand. In a lot of situations, you're allowed to choose various different skills that you want to use, And if you don't have skills in some cases, you can use items like, for example, a knife or a rope or a laser gun, for example, and you can solve the problem that way. So I liked the difficulty of this book. I did die several times getting through it. The way that I play game books is I don't cheat. I never cheat when I play game books, and this is maybe a good thing and maybe a bad thing because it can sometimes take me a really long time to get through them. But every time that I die, for whatever reason, I always begin at the beginning again. So I attempted this book 6 times before I was finally successful in finding an ending where I didn't die at the end of the 7th playthrough. And these are the various ways in which I met my demise. I was vaporized in a nuclear blast, my body was possessed, I fell off a building, I was shot with a cannon, I died of hypothermia, and I was burned with a laser. I didn't mind having to restart so many times though, because this book is extremely non-linear. There are various branching choices that you can make at different points, and so even though I had to replay this book multiple times, I never really felt like my journey was exactly the same thing twice. There was always another interesting choice that I was excited to go back and explore the next playthrough. Something that I think really makes this book unique and special is the focus on the psychology of the various other people that you meet in this world. I know that sounds weird, but I'll try to explain. So there are other people who overheard the broadcast basically explaining about the Heart of Volant and how it grants unlimited power, and you will have to compete with these other people for this artifact. You're going to have to make alliances and work together, or you're not going to be able to make it to the artifact, but of course people can be extremely quick to betray each other. This book really makes you think about who you should you trust anybody, and what are your own motivations for finding this treasure, and are they noble? The relationships that you have with the other people in this story are a lot deeper than I expected that you could have in a game book. There's still, of course, a limit to the amount of depth that you can have, seeing as how this is just interactive fiction, but I was impressed. Something that I also liked about this story is, as far as I can tell, I don't think there's a perfect ending. I don't think that there is one perfect true ending that you can get from this book. There are multiple ways that you can get out of this book alive, basically, but I wouldn't say that any one specific choice that you can make is better than all of the others. So some people might find that a little bit dissatisfying because you won't know if you won or not. There's no perfectly happy ending where everything ends up just sunshine and roses, but you're going to have to decide for yourself what you think the best course of action is and aim for that. Something that I could take or leave about this book are the illustrations. I feel like there are not as many as I would like, and the quality of them it's fine. It's not bad, but it's no fighting fantasy, even though the style is a little bit reminiscent of fighting fantasy. I love illustrations in game books, and I love how they seed my imagination and give me something to visualize when I'm reading, and I really would have liked to see more of this artwork in this book. But what of it there is, it's fine. It's okay. There isn't really anything that I don't like about this book. You really get the feeling when you're reading this that the author is extremely competent and has had a lot of experience writing game books before, and so in a lot of ways this book feels extremely polished and kind of like a culmination of many other bodies of work. If I had anything I'd want to improve about this book, I personally would maybe want it to be a little bit longer. It's a perfectly reasonable size for a game book from the time in which it was published. It has 454 sections, which is pretty good. It's pretty similar to Fighting Fantasy. But I've been really spoiled by more recent books like Rider of the Black Sun and Destiny Quest, so I'm getting a little bit more used to having longer game books. The length as it is perfectly fine, and I think that one attempt of this book makes for a good short-ish session of reading in an evening. Like all game books, my recommendation is to, once you start getting frustrated with the book and you've died a lot of times, just set it aside and try it again tomorrow rather than cheat. To me, it just kind of defeats the whole purpose of the medium for me, but of course, your mileage may vary, and maybe you are a blatant cheater and you prefer to read your books that way. I have no judgment. I will have to say though that if you are a cheater at game books, you will find it rather easy to find an ending where you will survive. In that, if you just assume that you have all 10 of the skills and you don't actually choose just 4 of them, you will probably find your way to the end because you have all the skills, so you can pass every test that you come across. And because there are no dice rolls, of course, your choice of skills is going to be the biggest factor in determining how your story ends. So my final verdict on Heart of Ice is read this book. This is honestly one of the best, if not the best, game books that I've ever read. Everything about it, its pacing, its world, its balance of gameplay styles, everything just feels so tight and so well balanced, and I just had a blast going through this thing. The more serious adult subject matter sets this apart from older choose your own adventure style books. The gritty realism, the interactions with other people, and the serious philosophical questions you might find yourself asking yourself all elevate this well above the average game book. I don't usually like giving numbered rankings, but in this case I would have to say that Heart of Ice is solidly a 10 out of 10. I do not think that you can go wrong with this book just because the story flows so well and the gameplay feels so balanced. Heart of Ice by Dave Morris absolutely gains the Solo Adventures seal of approval. Thank you so much for watching and getting this far. If you like what I'm doing, then please subscribe, because once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I've promised to reveal all of my P&P secrets. Also, if you're feeling extra cool, you could check out my Patreon and become a patron there. I make patron exclusive posts and intend to make more Patreon exclusive content going forward. I want to give a big thank you to all of my patrons who make this channel possible, but particularly to my heroic tier patron, Joshua Jumbles. So until next time, friends, stay adventurous.